Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Monday meeting of the VOCC. We'll just get right into it. Health and Human Services. I see you're first on the list.
Hey, good morning. Gina James, Health and Human Services. I gave a handout out and there's extra copies up here. There was 2 items I was going to talk with the board about this morning. One is the Veterans Relief Fund. I know a couple weeks ago, Commissioner Weber had kind of asked about where we're at with the Veterans Relief Fund services. So we've just put together our 2023 overview of the Veterans Relief Funding assistance provided. So that's what I handed out to you. You can see the total assistance provided was a little over $60,000 in 2023 to 85 veterans in the community. It shows a breakdown of what that assistance was between food assistance, utility, rent, death expenses, et cetera. And then we also are able with the fund to support the rent of certain veteran nationally recognized service organizations locally. So towards the bottom is the rent expenses that we support there. And then on the back, it just gives an overview. It just kind of compares 22 with 23 for the applications that have been processed and the amount of assistance given. So we, at 2023, served more veterans than we did in 2022 with a higher assistance amount as well. So just a little bit of a comparison there.
You know what, on this, I see, in 2023, we gave out a little over $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
We keep having people, the balance in that account is much higher than that, around 800. Am I close?
Yes. Yeah.
So do we not have the need we think we had, or are we too stringent on what we do? Any ideas?
I know the I don't know if I want to call it revenue, but the funding that's collected has gone up over the years. So the spending is not keeping up with what's being collected through the property taxes. So I know that that's a factor in it.
I mean, can we expand? I mean, are they able to say a veteran needs a wheelchair? Can we do that? Is that part of this wheelhouse, or
That would probably,
we got some restrictions that
there are some policies and procedures that the Veterans Advisory Board approves. So they have some assistance limits within that. So a lot of the assistance has limitations about how often you can access in a 12-month period. So it'll have a funding limit, and it might also say, you can access this, 3 times in a 12-month period up to X amount of dollars. So there are some of those limitations. They have increased those limits. I actually think twice last year increased the assistance limits, and they could certainly revisit and look at doing that again.
Yeah, I'd like to paint a different picture. The accumulation of funds, let's put that aside for just a moment and take note that this is a program that is managed by the vets for the vets, and they're in the best position to know how to spend the money. This board, for example, has only asked them in the past to be fiscally responsible. That is to say, don't overspend what they have. And they've done that pretty nicely. So when you take a look at that, in their hands, they haven't spent a lot. And what I'm hearing at the board meeting is a little bothersome to me, because it's the old, here's a pot of money, let's go spend it. Let's go find out who needs it. Well, we should not treat funds like this as trying to address issues where people already have it addressed, either by their own family or other agencies, like in terms of wheelchairs and things like that. I don't know, but the welfare agencies are all over the place. This is really not intended to compete with them. So I don't know that I want to mess with that, but I do want to point out something that I think you, Mr. Chairman, pointed out before. If we can give funds to what in the past, you could go into a seaport town and there'd be an old sailor's home, for whatever situation is, some sailors just didn't have provisions for the future. And so there's an old sailor's home. And that's the kind of thing where if we had enough funds collected over time, because we didn't squander them, and squandering is a soft squander, we could do something meaningful there. And that would also go coincidentally with the homeless housing problem. So I would like to discourage us trying to mandate spending or thinking it's a problem. Extra dollars typically is not a problem.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that, Arlen. I was just trying to get at when a program starts, it probably had X amount of dollars. So they said, we don't have enough to cover everything, so we're going to concentrate on A, B, C, D. And that's all I'm trying to ask. Are we still concentrating on A, B, C, D because we didn't have dollars for E and F?
A key issue, well, in the past, it got, the Veterans Relief Fund got into the tanker and new management came in, and new management always is the key on trying to fix problems. I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
But
So one of the concerns that I have is not in the fact that we're required to collect a certain minimum.
Mhm.
We have to collect that. But the figures that you've shared with us indicate that for a $60,000 expenditure in assistance to vets, we basically provide $35,000 in overhead. That's what we're spending on those 4 organizations. And to me, if there were another government program that was spending 50% on administration, I would be concerned, and we would all be very concerned.
Well, and I think the 30 or 35,000 is a high number that was plugged in just for budget purposes using the county's like indirect rate.
Mhm.
When we look back over time, 2022 was about 12,000.
But I'm looking at the money we spent for those organizations, the rent for those organizations as being administrative costs
Oh,
for administering the program.
oh,
And-
that's
And
what
that
you're
just,
looking
and
at.
that just seems a little bit high. Those
So-
organizations do a good job, and I'm not challenging that. My question is, are we really meeting the need that the fund was intended for? And it brings to mind that probably about 10 years ago, it seemed to me that there was a grant to rehabilitate an apartment complex in downtown Longview that was specifically designed to provide housing for low-income indigent veterans.
Mhm.
And I think that's gone away. I don't hear anything about it before. There was something about funding no longer being available. Do you know that the apartment complex I'm talking about?
It's, I'm not sure.
So- But I can't remember the name exact. I think it was a reconversion of something called Stratford Apartments.
Oh, that may be a Haswa project.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd have to check on that, but the rent that we're able to pay here that you see that 35,000
Mhm.
number, that's actually a unique allowance in the RCW. So not all of these agencies process the applications for us. They're any nationally recognized post locally could ask for assistance with their rent, whether they help us with the applications or not. That's sort of a special allowance in the RCW. So it's not necessarily directly connected to an agency's work with helping us process the applications.
I think we have to be careful of what comparisons we make. I've recited in the past a number which essentially says over many decades, the federal government spent an average of $227,000 for a family of four to bring up people out of poverty. We know that didn't work too well. The point being, though, is that $227,000 didn't end up in somebody's lap and say, here's your family income. It went through hands and hands and hands. If we look here, we're sitting in a nice room and we have the Hall of Justice. Every time we do anything like redo the roof, it costs us an arm and a leg. So that we are spending that amount on what I would call housing of these organizations doesn't seem like something I'd be concerned about.
You know, getting back to your, if the funds built up and you were able to do some housing or something for it, I sat on and listened to a group out of Central Washington called Hope Source. I think I might have talked to you about them once. They're basically Yakima County, I think Kittitas. They're in that central, and that's their niche. That's where they play. And what they do in the Reader's Digest version is they leverage county funds. It can be doc recording fees, maybe something like this, and made it with state and federal funds, and they build housing, self-sustainable housing. Once it's done, that it takes care of itself. And they've done it for veterans. They've done it for others. I think they have like 971 units or somewhere in that neighborhood, if I think right. But they won't come out of their niche over here. But if there was something of that, I think that's what you're talking to. You could leverage some of these funds and get some housing, and that would be of real interest too.
Yeah, the important thing you said was, among other things, is sustainable.
Yeah, they said all their projects are sustainable.
Yeah.
I haven't gone over there and visited, but
Yeah, I know Faithful Servants here operates kind of a transition thing, and it's self-maintaining. It's really important, I'll harp on it again, really important to let the vets decide on a lot of things. They really know. I come back from the era where the Vietnam era, and there were all kinds of games played by all kinds of people. Many of those games were not honorable. These vets, they know what's honorable. So if there's a vet, just by the fact that they were conscripted or something like that, shouldn't give them automatic entitlement. That's why we have the vets doing the vet interviewing. Isn't that right? And the other programs are for the other people. And if we're going to make a distinction about a special group of people, the vets, then I want that to be a clear distinction.
Yeah.
And we continue to talk with the advisory board about the fund balance and what they may see as an avenue forward. You know, we will continue to talk about looking at those assistance limitations and whether there's adjustments they would like to make there, and exploring some other options. We've talked about looking at a way to allow agencies to submit for special type projects serving veterans. So we continue to have those discussions with the advisory board. I think that's one of the reasons they bumped their meeting schedule up for 2024 from quarterly to every other month for 2024, so that we can keep the conversation going about what to do here.
So at $60,000 a year, the reserve, the unspent funds is going to continue to accumulate. And we're not talking about $10,000 or $15,000 a year. It's a pretty substantial amount, isn't it?
Right. So right now it's right around 800,000, like you mentioned, right?
And the money is invested along with all the other county funds.
hmm
And with the interest rate sub, we're using that money to fund the general fund.
All of this funding, so, and like the investment, the interest earned stays with the Veterans Relief Funding. So we've not talked about other options to do that. We actually internally, we had talked about, we had conversations in the budget process about the admin with Veterans Relief Fund, and the board approved using general funds to cover the admin costs. We could also consider using that investment funds as well if there was interest in doing that,
But you're not spending that much time. There are not that many people you're helping, so.
it's not a lot of our costs, no.
It's around 18 to 25,000 max.
Yeah, it varies. Last 2022 was 12,000. The year before was just under 10, and so
Yeah.
it's,
In the budget, it's much higher, but you never spend it.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so if there's any further questions on this or about the assistance, please let me know. Happy to talk more about that. We're in the process of rescheduling our advisory board meetings. We canceled with the ICE last week, so we'll get that rescheduled.
If possible, I would suggest we don't tamper too much with what's going on now and pursue what the chairman said, just identifying these opportunities.
Okay,
That seem all right?
Yeah, I think just the bit I heard over there, and I actually talked to terrible with names, but Hoswa about
Yeah.
that concept too.
Jennifer.
Yeah. Because it just seemed like, and you've known me long enough, when they said self-sustaining, that really got my interest in it.
Yeah.
You know, build it and it takes care of itself. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So we can expect probably to hit $1 million in that reserve fund by the
Probably,
end of this year.
yeah.
So that's not an insignificant amount to
Mm-hmm.
rehabilitate an apartment for.
Yeah.
It depends,
Horrible
hang
mess.
on, and the loss of purchasing power. I mean, the only thing that gets me about trying to be economical about things is if you don't spend it today, you can't spend as much tomorrow because it shrank on you.
Well, they were just in one project alone, they were able to start with 500,000 from dock reporting fees from a county, and then they leveraged some state and federal, and they built this complex. So they're telling me it can be done with funds that you're seeing in this
Mm.
program.
Sure, yeah. I'll look more into that. I know I'd glanced at it when you mentioned it before, but I'll take a deeper dive and learn more about it.
It pays for me to repeat the faithful servants. They had a model wherein all they needed was a startup cost of the first month's rent, last month's rent, and a very tiny float. So for like when people were asking for $300,000 per birth or something like that, he was saying, give me 15,000 and I can handle half a dozen people. Because once they're in, it's all self-sustaining. They have chores. Everybody has some different sources of income.
Right.
It worked.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking for you to, in case I'm speaking improperly.
No.
Okay, thank
No.
you.
I had just one other item I wanted to touch base with the board on this morning for this meeting. We have, as regarding document recording fees, we have on our website what's called an emergency fund application process. And this is for agencies can submit, it's posted year round. Agencies can submit an application for projects that address homelessness during an emergency. Historically, we've seen requests come in for severe weather shelter, and we have received a request for severe weather shelter. The request is from St. Stephen's Church, St. Stephen's Church for the severe weather shelter, the same one that opened last week during the weather. The request is for $9,000. It would support shelter, some staffing costs, the shelter coordinator costs and operational costs, supplies and things like that for the shelter. So they anticipate opening more this winter. It is cost reimbursement like the rest of our items, so they would have to expend the cost and then submit to us reimbursement. But we received the request, so I wanted to bring it to the board and see if there's a desire to support the request.
So Antonin Scalia has a quote, something like, the transformation of charity to government entitlement has produced donors without love and recipients without gratitude. I think we want to be very careful here. I feel I've been not quite sure how to say this, but as long as we shelter people, there's no need at all for them to plan. And that's the unintended consequence that just plays completely on our human nature. That's probably one of the underpinnings of why I think some of us do not want to pay ongoing costs. We'll help build something, but then it's up to the people to maintain it. And in the case of the church, $9,000. On the one hand, we say it's all voluntary and they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Please pay me. I don't see that the church might incur some additional costs in their utilities or something like that if they have to flush the toilet a little more often or something like that. But I just, these requests always leave me uncomfortable. No, I'm not trying to throw grandma off the cliff. I'm trying to tell people it gets cold here, plan accordingly. And as long as we don't acknowledge that, they won't plan accordingly.
That's always a tough one.
Well, the question might be, will they shut the doors if they don't get the $9,000? Pretty sure the answer is no. So it's, what are the consequences of not granting the $9,000?
I know they have some funding requests, a couple different funding requests out, and my guess is it would, not knowing how often they may open throughout the rest of the winter, they may or may not, depending on the funding, that might determine how, if they're able to open or not.
So Gina, that is a different church than has operated the cold weather shelter in the past. That's been the previous years. The cold weather shelter has been at the First Christian Church, which is across the street from Kessler School. And it's shifted, so they've shut down that one shelter, or is
No,
this
I
the
think it's
second?
still there.
Or is this a second shelter?
I think this church is just the fiscal sponsor for the, I don't know if it's KLMA altogether, but St. Stephen's is the fiscal sponsor, but I believe it's still at that church down there by Kessler.
Okay, so it's sponsored by the Ministerial Association.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the current one, they can't be open when school's in progress. So I think they have some limits, so they can't always be there. And so I think some of these others, at least that's when the calls came in over the weekend and with Larry and them trying to find another thing, it was because this one would not be able to be open because they'd reached their limit by the school. They were able to provide the people to go someplace else, but not the location. People should learn to take care of themselves. I get all that, but for $9,000, I can't live with myself if somebody doesn't and they're found leaned up against the wall dead on the street. I can't do that. I can't do that. And should they learn to take care of themselves? Yeah. They should, but, a lot of them, for whatever reason, don't, and we need to
But
figure that out, but Arden, I can't, if we didn't provide them a warm place and I would struggle with that.
I, I am very glad that it is you that has to make kind of the call because on my personal front, I do a lot for a lot of circumstances, but that's beside the point. Here, you are not looking at a person freezing out on the street. You're looking at an organization that says, I provided a service and I want you to pay for the service. So that the exact connection between those two is a little bit of a stretch. And if we mean anything at all about being good Christians, we would never turn somebody away. But we wouldn't continue to try and manipulate the system, which is the way I take a look at it. I don't know, $9,000 isn't a whole bunch. I've been in the past with things like with Community House, their washing machine broke down. Frank gave me a call or a call out, so I wrote a check for $500. Could I have bought the entire washing machine at the time? Yes. Would it have been the right thing to buy the entire washing machine? No. Was it the right thing to provide some help? Yes. I don't know what to make out of all that. It's just that if we repeat the same thing year in and year out, we will be repeating the same thing year in and year out. I don't know that I can say much more.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if you need a motion to go forward with providing the grant request, I'll make that motion.
I think that's what you need, right? It
Uh,
sounded like when Carol chatted with me, it sounded like you guys already had a fund set up. It wasn't anything that went through us. It was just,
We have sort of the process established, but we typically bring the request to the board
Okay.
for approval. I don't know that we need a formal motion, but an approval from the majority of the board for us to move forward with supporting the request.
go ahead.
You got your direction?
Okay. Was that a yes and a yes?
That's.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Okay.
That's a good spot you're in, isn't it?
Okay, those were the only two items I had for this particular meeting, and I'll be back later on.
I got a quick question for you because I keep getting the DocuSign. Did
Oh.
last meeting, did we take care of the hen thing? Is
Yeah,
that?
You
Because it keeps
probably,
sending-
you
keeps sending
probably
me the
got another
DocuSign.
notice. I think we had to resend it. The DocuSign, we're trying to, I know this is kind of a new process, so we're trying to work out the bugs. So you may have gotten another request in DocuSign.
But this is something the whole board has
Yes,
looked at and seen
Yes.
and done.
yes.
Okay.
And I think we authorized him to sign on our behalf.
Okay.
As often as it takes.
I'm not, well, yeah, I'm just not always clear on, like, I got a DocuSign today on the Blake decision that just came to me and
Well, and sometimes when we're working with the state partners, sometimes they'll include the board and we don't know that they have. That's what happened earlier it got sent directly to Commissioner Dahl and we went, hold on, it hasn't come to a meeting yet.
yeah, just trying to make sure everybody has a chance to see these things before.
Yeah.
But it's good to be careful because for some reason or other, I'm on the books someplace as being the one who has to sign some document. And I always go through the board and our attorneys because
Yeah.
You got on the list for the opioid settlement? Is that what it was? Or was it the Blake
I
decision?
think it is the
I
opioid
think it's the
settlement.
I think
yeah,
you're
it's
on
like-
the opioid. I got one today.
Why would they pick Arn to be the opioid point person? I don't know.
I don't know, but my arm's itching.
Thanks, Gina. Appreciate your time. IT.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kim Hort, IT Director. Over the past month, we've been wrapping up on some projects and gearing up some new project. At the Hall of Justice, we are underway on moving forward with the Hall of Justice Building Security Project. We received grant funding from the state, and then there was a 40% match that was approved in the Superior Court budget. And then Facilities is looking to invest some of their funds. We've reinstated the internal services team, which includes risk management, IT, and facilities and public services.
You know, I can't remember what this project is. Can you do a little short reminder
Sure.
what security project means?
Yes. So this is grant funding for court security. So it applies to the Hall of Justice building, where we are addressing critical security needs such as exterior doors, lack of visibility in, secured hallways or unsecured hallways. So this is addressing door lock system and IP cameras.
Thank you.
There, this is a non sequitur. There's a Q&A that says they hear you, but they don't see you. So shall we announce that you're having computer problems still?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't seem to come in.
Specific on this project, I think it's a good thing. In the past, we've done things without an overall picture of how that would fit in and how we would manage that. So I hope you look pretty carefully. Also, there's a tendency for software and hardware people to sell you something enough so that you have to buy again, and you have to buy their services, and you have to buy this and buy that.
We're taking that into consideration. I know that we've had proprietary things bite us in the butt in the past where we're locked in. An example would be like our heating and cooling over at the Hall of Justice is
Yeah.
proprietary. This one is not proprietary. We're looking at scalability and independent management where we can incorporate systems that we have, such as like our access cameras,
Yeah.
rather than having to do an overhaul. It's a unanimous agreement that the main lack of infrastructure is our door lock system. So I'm heavily relying on Facilities to kind of steer that along with just kind of addressing those key points of risk within the Hall of Justice. So like, again, employee access and public access and stuff like that. So we do have to expend the grant funds by the end of June of this year. So again, trying to make sure that we spend wisely and invest again into what we need rather than, buying a system that we can't manage or sustain.
The only complaint I have is that we're not investing, we're spending.
Correct.
Thank you.
So we've done physical walkthroughs with departments over there, such as the sheriff's office and the courts, to get their input along with, again, risk and facilities. So we're doing the final walkthrough with a vendor, which is scheduled for Tuesday, and then finalizing the scope of work.
So you get it all set up and then we're going to move offices around.
The beauty of it's scalable. So the thing is that we can apply that infrastructure countywide. So that's kind of our strategy.
Yeah, hopefully there's a management interface that it doesn't really, it can be fixed quickly. Speaking of management interface, you're still working on your list on the features to put in our personal list from a spreadsheet or something like that.
For the phone project? Is that for your phone, the
Yeah.
phone contacts?
Yeah.
That one, to be honest, I didn't investigate, but I did not get a final answer.
Okay.
So thank you for the reminder.
There's, there's another thing to add on to that one
Sure.
then, which is I get phone calls from, anyhow, I get phone calls and I listen to them and I want to forward them to the Parks Department, say. But I don't know what the Parks Department phone number is. I got to look it up someplace. So I used to have on my desk a sheet of paper with a bunch of handwritten stuff. New phone system, I threw that away. I said, okay, we got this problem solved. I still have the problem. So I don't expect the solution overnight or anything like that, but that's another thing is where if I want to forward a message, tell me the number that, or let me put in a name or, you know, something like that. We've got all that capability and I'm surprised for what we paid, it's not included in there. I send all my bad voice text to Alyssa.
So I've added that as a follow-up item to do the contact import. I know you brought that up, so I will circle back on that. I do want to highlight excellence in service from Jake Fleshman and Jordan Cole. They've been monumental in this project. So we are in like the final close-up of the project. We are under budget by $30,000 or so. And we are in the stages of actually unplugging our legacy system. So it's been a successful yet stressful project, but I'm very proud of the IT team and what they've accomplished. Any other questions on the phone system? We have successfully completed our audit. We passed, so I was very excited to get that off my to-do list. So
The CJIS stands for?
Criminal Justice Information System. So this is our inmate roster, our connectivity, interstate connectivity of information. And so every 3 years, we have to go through an audit with our Washington State Patrol access team. And that includes the jail, juvenile, drug court. There's various elements the county has access to. So we just passed the final audit. So that was a nice stressor off my plate.
We see other contracts from time to time. Spellman, is this part of it all?
Yep.
And that ties in with our municipalities also.
Yes.
So we're all copacetic?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Server room updates.
Excuse me, I did have a question, Kim, on that audit. Is the 911 part of that to review, even though they're not part of the county anymore?
I made sure that they're responsible for their own audit. So no, we don't have to.
They kind of generate the initial records that.
Right, but they still have to go through their own audit with this
Okay.
Washington State Patrol.
Okay.
We purchased through grant funds and then also just, budgeted for it, network hardware. So Lance Hollinsworth has a few new items that he's deploying. So I do appreciate, his expertise and then the county's understanding as we're making these changes. We typically do them during off hours, so there's less disruption. Hunter Reeves is one of our technicians, and he's been outstanding assisting Lance with all the plugging and chugging. So wanted to give a shout out to him as well. The administration building server room, that HVAC system has been replaced. So facilities coordinated that. We went out to bid and it's been successfully running. So our server room is a lot cooler. So good news on that. On the back of this agenda, there are some graphs in regards to cybersecurity. This is from our kind of training and phishing platform, also known as KnowBe4, which is a risk pool funded platform. We are a little high, quite a bit high, based off of our program maturity of 1 year. Every month we send out phishing campaigns to, email users, and we have had several individuals click on attachments or input data, open data. So we're just trying to educate our users by using that kind of phishing campaign to alert them that, think before you click kind of thing. along with giving them resources to report suspicious email, which is the second graph. We've implemented that for about a year, and that is a tool that's built into our Outlook that allows us to, if it's suspicious, you can click the button and it'll run through an analog process to determine if it's suspicious or not.
How would you like me as a user to behave if I've got a lot of emails and I'm going through and I look at this one, I say, this looks like something bizarre, so I can delete it or I can mark it as a phish. Which one would you like me to do?
It's better to mark it as a phishing campaign because you can flag it as spam email. And then that one will also put it into that algorithm to calculate for you that it's spam.
Okay, so there's a check afterwards because it could be a legit email, but
Sure.
I'm just looking at it, so I move on.
Right.
Okay.
In my role and with my name be down on the public website, I believe that there's, technology out there that can scrape that data off of the internet. And I am the lucky winner of getting a lot of promotional emails for IT products. And so a lot of those, I just look at the domain, which is the, after the @ symbol. I'm like, I know I'm not doing business with this company, and I mark it as spam.
I'm curious, for something designated as spam, what part of the email do you use as a trigger?
It's primarily, there's a flag that we have turned on that identifies an email as internal or external. So that's one of my key indicators, is knowing that it's not from within our organization, and then looking at the domain typically.
But
is how
I'm
I-
tricky. I'll send the same email out of 3 different domains. Do you track it by domain? Or do you actually take a look inside the email and say, seen this before?
I have that preview pane. So in a way, my Outlook shows the content of the email so that I glance at it and can see that, especially if they call me Kimberly. My mom is the only one that calls me Kimberly, and that's when I'm in trouble. So when I start getting, hey, Kimberly emails, I'm like, I know that this isn't a regular email engagement. So it's just personal identification tools that I use, or mechanisms.
So in summary, people should not be afraid to mark it as spam or fish alert.
Mhm.
Nothing bad will happen if you mismark it.
Right. And we can always go into our Know Before platform in IT and move things back into certain categories.
Got
So if we find that there was something that was marked incorrectly, we can rectify that from
So
an
generally,
administrative.
your preference would be, if in doubt, mark it.
Click it. Mhm.
Okay.
Fish it, not click it. Let me clarify that.
What's easy for you to say? You understood, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
And then we're just trying to encourage, think before you open the USB drive. So we've done some email trainings and stuff like that, informing users. The other thing that we're incorporating is our new hire orientation. We do kind of a technology overview on good behaviors for cybersecurity. Coming down the pipeline, especially on the policy side, we have a use of technology policy that is being reviewed by several county users, along with the county legal team, along with user account policy. Both of these were policies that were needed in order to pass our audit for CGIS. And so Washington State Patrol accepted the draft version, but I would like to get them finalized and actually on the books as a county policy. So I'm in the review stage with various people on our county team.
So you expect that to come back to us for when?
I have them drafted. I'm just waiting for legal's feedback. Kelly is also volunteered to look it over. So I'm just kind of getting user input before I do a workshop with you guys.
Is this a project we can expect by the end of the year?
Oh,
By
yeah.
the end of the fiscal year?
I would
next
say
month?
within a month or at most 2. I mean, it's drafted. It's just kind of tweaking it to.
Okay.
Comment or just smirk?
It's when you say voluntold, I think I got to learn that technique with this lady.
Yeah.
Usually it goes the other way.
Yes.
She said that I can send her stuff and I was like, opportunity. So I appreciate her time. And then we're also trying to develop some procedures and consistency within the IT team. So we're working on refining some of our processes, such as like, how do we do a particular task within IT? And, we have 4 people doing it. What's the most efficient way? So kind of taking the lean approach of our business processes and building out some procedures. So that's kind of our focus for this year, is to clean up policies and procedures. And then the last item actually falls into our next hour meeting for contracts. So I don't have anything else.
Do you have, are you thinking about having interns over the summer?
Yes,
And that's already in the works then?
slightly. We do have
In the works?
well, I'm communicating with the gal that we hired last summer, and she has a lot of opportunities, and I asked her to keep us as a backup plan if those don't come to light. But we typically start advertising, I believe it's in May.
Is this the time when I say something that I probably said a dozen times? I would go talk to LCC and get friendly with the professor that is roughly involved with what you do, and say, do you have a top student or 2 that I should talk to?
Yeah, I was working with the IT director, but he has since resigned from LCC. So
I'm thinking you talk to the academic staff too.
I can do that.
Okay,
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Kim.
you.
Parks and Rec.
Is that spelled with or without the W?
This particular one without.
Good morning, Alyssa Dunn, Parks Operations Specialist.
I don't think she heard you.
I beg your pardon?
I don't think she heard you.
She was probably fortunate.
Okay.
Uh-oh. All right, so today I was gonna update you guys on future grants for this year and projects that we're doing, and then I was gonna go over the revenue that we've had from Riverside and Harry Gardner reservations. So I'll give you an update on this last grant that I applied for. We did not get it. We didn't even have a chance. Basically, it was 60% points that are calculated based off of social vulnerability and low income, which we don't rank very high on, apparently. So yeah, other than that, if those points weren't included, we would have got it. And the grant was for resurfacing the basketball and tennis court. They're cracked really bad. People don't even use them anymore. We have potholes because when they built it in the 70s, they didn't take the stumps out of the ground before they put everything on top. So all of that has rotted and it makes holes. So we go through and we patch them as they pop up.
This is separate from the old tennis courts that have been repurposed.
So that is the tennis court.
It's the tennis court. Okay.
Yeah, so the tennis court and the basketball court are right next to
Thank
each
you.
other.
Okay.
So since
And
then,
we're talking about Riverside right now?
yeah. So trying to pivot and find other opportunities. Right now, I'm trying to work with a pickleball club. We're going to come up with some options, see if anybody wants to do some donations, fundraisers, things like that. This grant was very unique because most grants, they don't cover fixing things that you already have. It's always new stuff. So we will not be able to find another grant for a project like this. So that's our update for this last one. Grants for this year, we have the WCF through RCO, and that's going to be the legacy play area for Riverside. That application is due on May 1st, so I'll be back with a final plan for that one. The hope was we were going to build an all-inclusive playground and then a pump track next to it, and some like little small covered areas and trails that lead to everything.
Another one is the RCO Nova Trail Grant. This one doesn't require a match, so that's kind of a good opportunity for us, but it's more of finding a partner. Basically, we could turn one of our current properties into an off-road vehicle park, or we could partner with an existing trail and build a trailhead with a bathroom parking area. So think like Growler's Gulch. Possibility to partner with them and see if we can build an actual trailhead for them, which we've talked in the past about it, but that kind of died off. I'm going to try and bring that back this year and see if they're still interested. Do you have questions?
You might want to get in contact with our assessor. I know that she and her husband are active in a Castle Rock area off-road club.
What kind of off-road club? What was her name? Okay. I'll reach out to them.
Yeah, along those lines, there's a group of rather enthusiastic and spirited and people out of the Cougar area, and they've managed to press all kinds of changes that we've agreed to on the positive side, but they've got a stumbling block right now because the laws are such that the speed limit has to be, the max must be some number. And so I have a picture that if we're going to do a trail of some kind, there's probably a 2-mile trail we could do, a little spendy probably, to bypass the state highway there where we simply are unable to change the speed limit. We're bringing it down. That would solve a lot of problems. And I think if you did that, they'd build a statue. Well, I was going to say that, but then I don't want to be pandering because I know she prefers the outcome than the statue.
That's
Yeah.
definitely
Okay. I think they came and they met with us a couple years ago about changing the speed limit. So I reached out to them. And that's all we have for grants for this year. This is a big year for RCO. They open them up every 2 years. So this is the time to apply. Projects that are not grant funded is the Coweeman River Park bathroom will go in before May 31st is our target date. It's already been purchased. We're waiting for them to build it and bring it out. And then we're going to start working on a Hog Island Park development plan. We'll kind of see what we can do there and look for grant opportunities. And then I'll be back next month to go over the final comp plan. The park board has decided we're just going to move forward after not getting a response from some of the local park boards that we normally go to for their input. And then we're also going to start working on Harry Gardner campground improvements, which will be extra water spigots and some covered areas and hopefully some covered tent site shelters. Most of our sites are in full sun. It's really hard to camp during the summer in those kinds of conditions. So we're going to build a couple and see if that improves our camping. So that's all I have for projects. So for revenue, back in 2017, we started online reservations for Harry Gardner and for Riverside. Before that, it was all first come, first serve, and it got really chaotic, especially at Riverside's covered area, the pavilion. We'd have fights on the weekends because somebody would get there and it was already taken. So our revenue has increased by 326% since our first year. We've seen a 65% increase from 2020 to 2023. Just to kind of give you an example, it keeps growing. And this is for Harry Gardner Park. And then total revenue that we've received from Harry Gardner reservations from 2017 to this last year is $180,000. Just to give you an idea of how busy it is, this last summer, we only had 2 RV sites that were open for 1 weekend. All the other weekends were booked. The only problem that we're seeing right now is our tent sites don't fill up, which is what I was talking about. So our project that we're doing, hopefully that'll increase. So for Riverside reservations, our total revenue since 2017 is $27,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for 1 day at the pavilion, it's $50. For picnic sites, it's $25. So the hope is that basically covers the garbage and some of our time. And we've had a 32% increase in reservations from 2018 to this last year. So everybody loves the reservation system. It makes it easier for people to plan. The only complaint that we've got is they would like more covered areas at Riverside because we only have one and it's booked.
The nice thing about your reservation system that it has a dollar attached to it. So in the absence of a price, you don't know what's important to people. And when you see this, now you know what's important to
Yeah.
people. This is a nice segue into a fee for use that I think is really gives us a lot more positive feedback about how to use things. And clearly your fees are not abusive. And because it's a park, it can be shared over a lot of people. So everything points well. Is that something you might consider for tennis or basketball?
Reserving,
Yeah,
maybe after we fix them up, nobody would pay
Yeah.
to play there right now. For our softball fields, that would be a great idea. After they get fixed up, just as another update, in the past, we always partnered with Kelso Youth Baseball for the last 20 some years. We ended that contract and now we're with Devil's Fast Pitch. They are doing fantastic work out there. The fields look amazing compared to what they used to look like. And they're hoping to bring in more people into the park for tournaments and things like that. So as those fields improve, I think it'd be a good idea on the weekends when they're not using them to reserve them, especially for company parties.
Couple comments and questions. One, Commissioner Mortensen brought up maybe a trail tie up in the Cougar area. The decade I spent on Nova, that seems like it would be unless things have really changed there. I spent the decade of the 90s, so it's been a while. You know, typically those are a partnership between who the landowner is. I don't know who owns that, whether it's WashDOT or DNR or whoever does, and a club. And because a lot of those grants require a match and they can use labor, at least back in the day, they can use labor to do that match. So that may be, if not for you to pursue, it would certainly be an avenue for that club up there that wants it to pursue, because I know some of those are available, at least they were in the 90s, because I funded a lot of them or helped fund a lot of those. The other thing on Riverside, you know, as that area grows, what kind of pressures are we seeing? More and more pressures?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
busier than it's ever been, especially during the summertime.
The only park in Lexington?
Yeah.
Pretty much?
Besides schools.
Yeah, and there's more kids than there's ever been. And that's why there's such a big push for this legacy project at Riverside for a bigger playground and a pump track. The whole idea with the pump track is it will engage our teenagers.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teenagers out there and a lot of them are very bored. They don't know how to recreate.
Yeah,
Well-
it's sad that they've pretty much lost the use of the courts.
Mhm.
You got potholes. They did 100% maintenance grant. We have any luck with that?
That was the one that I went for and we did not get it. And that's the one that,
Because you didn't have the 60% of it was on the other.
yeah, because we are not socially vulnerable at Riverside Park, apparently.
Yeah. Hopefully we can find some way to solve that out there, because we've seen the apartments go in, the schools out there, there's more plans. If we're the only park, there's gonna be more pressures there. And the other thought I had is, when you're talking about unused campsites, I know yurts get real popular. Have you ever thought, I mean, if you.
Well, our original plan when we built that was to include yurts. However, we didn't have enough funding to build them because they're very expensive and the upkeep is very expensive. Another idea was to do cabins instead of yurts because yurts don't last as long and their upkeep cost is a lot more.
Talking like a little KOA cabin,
Yep.
type
Mhm.
cabin.
Yeah, so small. And the downside with those is staff time to clean them, which currently we do not have. So if we built those, we'd need more staff just to take care of them.
Gotcha.
Question, how much do you think approximately would be needed to refurb the tennis court and the basketball court?
So we went for $100,000. And that was, we got a bid from Lakeside. So that was to resurface them. And then it would be to paint them because you have to use
And-
special paint.
Yeah. And so you're saying that it would be 100,000?
Yeah, and that does not include our labor to do the painting or anything like that. That's just the paint materials and then the resurfacing.
You know, the reason I'm asking, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a chance here? I say we try and use whatever funds we can scrape up legally.
I wouldn't oppose that at all. I just think that Lexington just keeps growing and I mean, when I drive by it, at any point in time in the weekend, it's filled with soccer and it's just
Yeah.
all kinds of activity going on there and
And
I
for
think
me,
we should be able to provide that. I mean, if we can.
and for me, it fits the pattern of we spent the money to build it and we just let it go. That's shame on us.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
What are you referring to?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, you said you know what I'm talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. He
Oh,
does, but I
trying to
don't.
get the money from the general fund, from ARPA, from Public Works. Just someone is gonna find us the money.
Yeah, and we can work on that. I know we have some sub projects for any leftover ARPA funds that we would consider like the revenue replacement side that don't have as many, I guess, strings attached, for lack of a better word. So this could be one of our optional projects to bring to the board once we realize what we've spent in ARPA, what's remaining.
I just heard a volunteer.
Yeah.
Voluntold, no.
Kathy, in her finance committee meeting the other day, she's going to be in on Wednesday and talking about the rural facilities district. And it has pretty strict rules of what that does, but the interest earned on that account is more flexible. And so I'm just writing down, that'll be a question for her on Wednesday. The funds itself are pretty strict what they got to be used for, but the interest it earns is a little more flexible. So maybe there's something, because I agree, if we can find something, I think that's fairly important out there in Riverside.
Well, I would suggest that the improvements include a designation of certain hours in the day for veterans. There's a big fund we can dip into for that.
Your
We could name it.
colleagues looking for, he's.
Yeah.
And this project is so recent that we could get this done by the end of the year if money was available. Because our bids that we did were back, gosh, I want to say like October. So, and the plan was that it would start this spring. So I don't see why we wouldn't be able to get it done as long as we got on a Lakeside schedule.
I think the direction is, if Savannah, if you can find the funds, we'll take a look at it.
Do it.
Great.
And that's all the updates that I have.
Question? How are we doing on golf frisbee and what's the conversation on the dog park? A dog park.
There's been a conversation on a dog park, but we haven't made any progress or plans for it.
Is there a demand for a dog park?
Lexington people are divided when it comes to a dog park. There's half, they don't want to see a dog park, and then there's a couple people that would like to see it. I can see a need because during the winter time, I do see people that come in with their dogs and they use the softball fields, which will have to end soon now that it's going to be competition fields. But I don't think there's as big of a demand as, say, Longview.
And the golf?
And so disc golf, it's died down now that we're in the off season. The plan was to partner with the club that came to us in the first place to finish the tee pads. However, they've kind of stepped back a little bit, and we're going to try and charge ahead in the springtime and see where we can get.
I didn't understand that. I'm sorry.
So the only thing left to do for that project is the tee pads. So where they stand to throw, they would like to see concrete squares.
Yeah.
Which they're still playing without them. It's not mandatory, but it's just an improvement. But the baskets are up, the course is there, everybody plays it.
And that's the kind of thing you do under reservations also?
Ooh, no. Would you like to see it reservable?
I'm stuck in the sense that I'd like reservations because it does help organize things and keeps it from going chaotic. But again, it also gives you a potential estimate of what the demand is. So you stepped out of line, you stepped ahead to put this golf park, this Frisbee golf out there. And I still have no idea if it's 2 people who were pressed heavily or it's 300 who are organizing and there'll be tournaments there.
So next time I come, I can bring some of those numbers. There is an app that people use as basically like a map. And it basically shows you how many people have been on the course to use the map, which I mean, that's something. But I can tell you that it's busy. Every other week during the summer, they have, I don't want to call them tournaments, but it's like the club gets together and they all play and there's probably 40 to 50 people there. And then on the weekends, we always see somebody playing. I mean, even when it's windy, there's always one person out there. Not sure if that's not why.
Well, if it's 2 a.m, it speaks loudly. Lights on every, oh, never mind.
Whoa, that's expensive.
So when you talk about partnering with other groups, is it a true partnership or are we expecting them to spend the money? We're not making money available on a matching basis, are we?
Are we talking for like the Nova?
Well, when you were talking about reaching out and setting up with clubs, like you said, the Frisbee Golf Club isn't able to finish what they
So
said they wanted.
With the Frisbee golf, when that all originally started, they were gonna do all of the, I don't know, the manpower, I guess, to actually put everything in. That it didn't work out that way. But they do want to be involved, maybe coming out and helping with concrete. We'll see where that goes. You never really know when you partner with somebody who's gonna do what. So we'll see. But like with the Nova grant, there will be no match required.
Yeah.
So, nobody's really fiscally responsible. It'll be more up to them because they will have more of an idea of what that trail needs.
Well, one of the reasons that I asked is that I know the city of Longview has a neighborhood parks matching grant program that they make something like maybe $50,000 a year that's just available for groups to apply to on a matching. They have to come up with 50%. The city kicks in 50%.
Right.
So it's park improvements. And that seems to work. The amounts are modest and doable. And, with a little extra money tie-in, that sometimes is the extra oomph that the volunteers need to say, oh, yeah, we can get this money if we get our act together.
Yeah. The idea is great, but that would require that we have extra money sitting around, which currently we don't. But most people, when they get excited about a project, they call either one of you or they call me and then we go from there. I usually try and accommodate most groups when they're looking for something in the park because it gets done when somebody's excited about it.
One last question from me on this, and this goes back a ways, and you were in the process of amending or looking at your park plan. The call I got because we didn't allow licensed UTVs to come in the park. Have we looked at that?
So I took that to the park board and they voted on it. They decided not to change our code and they would like to keep them out of the park because it is too hard for us to enforce those people that think they have free range as soon as they roll in with 4 wheels. We had an issue where we kind of stopped enforcing it just to see what would happen for a couple weeks. We had a kid that almost got hit. We have teenagers, I don't want to say teenagers, but younger people that are licensed to drive them, but it's not safe in a park setting that is very busy, especially during the summer when almost all parking spots are taken. And then you throw a UTV into that, it's a little chaotic.
That would be more appropriate for Cook's Ferry, wouldn't it?
Yes. Any of the other parks would be a great idea.
Well, I see them run all over in different cities and I'm not sure what the issue is. You got people not obeying traffic laws, that's one thing, but just the unit they come in on.
I think if, it must be, I'm assuming that if they were to drive in and find a parking spot, a legitimate parking spot, everything would be fine. The picture you're painting sort of is they start driving all over the place because they can.
Some of them drive off road. Some of them think that they can drive onto their trails, which is chaotic. They're not supposed to be on there, that makes us the police force trying to keep everybody safe and running around and saying, no, you can't drive there. I asked the park board and that's what they decided. If you want me to take it back to them, I can.
Either way, you're in the position of to be being a cop, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
Well, if they took their Honda Civic and drove across the deal, they get in trouble too, right? I
Exactly
mean,
your
You're
point.
talking about behavior that's not right. I'm just talking about machine that gets you to the park. If you operate the machine like you're supposed to, it's
I'm
not an
with you.
issue.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. When I get those calls again, I'll
Except
send them on your way.
Maybe a Subaru's okay.
Subaru, yeah, I think they're eco-friendly, so you're good.
Not if they're on an unapproved trail, right?
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
We need to close out, start again, or we can just keep going? Okay. So we'll move into, it's past 10, but we'll move into the consent agenda items. Anything on we have. There you are. I guess yours are yours the first two?
Property tax, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, Deborah Gardner, Cowlitz County Treasurer. We have a couple affidavits that are on the consent agenda. We do this every January. It's an RCW that we present any refunds that we've issued throughout the year. And then that's one of the affidavits, and the other one is uncollectible taxes. There's certain properties, personal property, businesses closed, they've up and moved, and we've tried to collect the taxes. And once they're uncollectible, we present this report to you once a year. So we just wanted to let you know that's on the consent and answer any questions if you have any.
How much is the value of the refunds?
The refunds is $791,500. And that is not just current expense, that's all taxing levies. That's the total.
Goes back 5 years or whatever it is.
No, just well, these are the refunds we issued in 23.
Okay.
So they're either a senior was applied for an exemption and got the exemption. The exemption can go back 3 years, they get a refund. So it could be multiple years depending on the type of refunds. There's destroyed property, different reasons people will apply for exemption or for petitions for refund. And then there's any adjustments to the roll, if there's someone received their tax statement and there had an error and they brought it forward to the assessor, or whatever, and we corrected it, that could create a refund as well.
And sometime there are some high value property owners who challenge the assessment and then they're taken off the rolls for a period of time or you're not talking about that.
No, these are actually refunds that we've issued.
Anyone in particular jumps out as a large?
No, not in,
Okay.
not in 23.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
You've got item number 2 is uncollectible personal property tax.
Correct.
What's the number there?
What's the number?
Yeah, the dollar amount.
The grand total of the write-off is $49,500.
And can you give me an example of what might be personal property we'd let go?
Yeah, I'll let Randy speak for that. She handles these personal properties.
Okay, thank you.
Randy Goslin, Treasurer's Office. So we have a couple of different types of personal property on this uncollectible listing. Manufactured homes are considered personal property for tax reasons unless they've been title eliminated to the real property. Business assets, equipment and things that are used to run a business.
We see a lot of abandoned RVs out in the countryside. Is that, are RVs on the list,
No, RVs aren't taxed as personal property,
but manufactured homes are?
but manufactured homes are. So what you'll see on this list is manufactured homes that have been removed or destroyed. And the assessor's office may have come in after the fact and seen that it was removed. And we don't know where it is, but it already has taxes levied against us. So we do our best to try and track down the previous owner. And sometimes that's just not possible. Businesses that have closed, they up and move all their equipment out of the place, and the assessor comes in to do an assessment, sees that it's been moved. We do our best again to track down the previous owner and collect those taxes. And once the account's been deleted by the assessor because they've determined it hasn't been there, and we do a couple more rounds of trying to collect and we have no success, then it makes it to this list.
So if I owned a manufactured home at some point, the condition and circumstances might make the price to value of the home be so low that the that the personal property tax is higher than that, I just step away from it and the county has to chew all that.
So these are manufactured homes that have been removed or destroyed. So they're not abandoned.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah.
If I guess I don't see very many of those after the fact that they're abandoned. This list is typically the initial generating of this list is based on accounts that the assessor has deleted. So they've determined that the property no longer exists in Cowlitz County.
Okay, I'm still a little slow in figuring something out. So at the beginning of the year, or right the last day of the year, my manufactured home blew up. It no longer exists.
Mhm.
I paid my 2023 taxes, let's back it off a year, my 2022, and it's now 2023. I don't owe any tax on something I no longer have. Is that a number that would be included in the 49K, or how does that number enter?
So the situation that you're talking about would probably fall under destroyed property, like a responsible taxpayer. If their manufactured home was destroyed somehow, they would come to the assessor's office and fill out a petition for destruction of property. So the taxes would be adjusted accordingly. If
we're talking about here about I own a manufactured home, say it's in a park. It could be on somebody else's land, lease land or whatever. And I just up and move it without notifying anybody. But it still has taxes owing on it. So when the assessor goes out to make the next assessment, whenever that is, when they're actually physically inspecting the property and the manufactured home no longer exists there, it's been moved, then they will delete the property from the rolls, but any previously levied taxes are still remaining due on the account. And that's what we're removing.
Well, I'm not sure if what you're asking, because the taxes that we're collecting were levied on the property on January 1. So even if it blew up on December 31st, they're gonna owe that year's taxes because they were levied onto the property on January 1.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, is that $49,000 something that was imputed or actually was paid? I don't, I'm confused. I can talk to you offline on that.
That's just the value of the property that's removed from the total assessment roll, right? That's not a
It's the
refund.
total taxes
Yeah.
that are being, not the value of the
Written off.
property, but the, yes,
Yep.
it's the total taxes that we assessed to a taxpayer who owned this property, and we are now unable to collect them for reasons.
They're
as
actually-
And what's probably, well, what's important to me has something happened to make this out of line, or is this pretty typical? I mean, my memory is about 50,000 is pretty
Yes.
roughly, pretty typical.
There was,
That much.
there was
movement.
nothing extraordinary about the numbers
Okay.
when we ran this report and prepared this for you.
That's a pretty tiny percentage
Mhm.
of the total
Yeah.
property rolls, so.
So one more try. So that's the owed and accrued tax. And the accrual stopped the day that the home exploded or disappeared.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I understand now.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
thank you. Kim? I think this was yours, the Astound? Yeah, okay.
I wasn't sure what order I came up on the list, so thank you for calling me forward. Tomorrow I have before you a multi-year contract with Astound. This is kind of a two-part where this is addressing our master service agreement for 5 years. And then there's also a service order for our internet. So Astound was formerly known as Wave, formerly known as Cascade Networks. So we've been conducting business with this enterprise company for about 15 plus years. So this is just kind of building that inner agreement, that master agreement for the 5 years. It's gone through legal, so the terms and conditions meet their needs. And then the service order is actually saving the county $200 a month. And we're actually getting more for our money. We are upgrading to a 2 gig connection rather than a 1 gig. So we should see better internet speeds. And then just kind of 32 IP addresses for Lance, which is the /27.
The 2 gig is the pipe out of our intranet.
It's in and out. So like what we go out outside of our buildings. So we have our
Right, inside our buildings, we're not bound by the 2 gigs.
correct. I think we're trying to go up to 10, no, up to 2 gig. I don't know if,
Okay,
I know Lance is increasing it. I want to say we're going from 1 to 2 gig as well. And then with the new core catalyst switch that we got grant funding for, he's installing at the hall, and I believe that's like 100.
so just to be sure I understand, which might be difficult, if I'm in my office and I send out 2 gigabytes of information to some entity outside of the intranet. That would be 2 gigs out would be the maximum I could do. Simultaneously, do I get 2 gigs back? Or the way you mentioned it, it sounded like it was the aggregate of in and out.
I would have to defer
Okay.
to Lance about how all of the network connectivity would be, especially with the new core being installed over at the Hall of Justice. It's going to be,
This is the kind of thing where as long as you don't get complaints, everything's fine.
the summary is you're going to see an improvement
Yeah.
and we're going to save $200 a month by locking in at this rate.
Will we actually see a difference because all we do is internet, emails? We're not emailing the 2 gig. That's a bit of information, are we?
It depends on all kinds of things in the aggregate. So your email won't amount to a hill of beans, but when you add 500 other people's emails of varying sizes, maybe. But I think it just would show up in the latency and
Like, would you see a difference in Zoom?
Zoom might be. Yeah, that's
I
a
would say
good
it's more
point.
for like streaming where you're going to have larger packets of data and more frequency of data going across the network. So like
Sometimes
media
you'll be on a
streaming.
Zoom and it'll lose connection or do different things. I don't.
Yeah.
I think that might be at Zoom also. You can imagine they've got to have a pipe that's,
Yeah, I would, yeah.
And then it also depends if you're actually plugged into the network versus streaming through like a wireless access point. That also can impact
Yeah,
your streaming.
yeah.
But-
Back, yeah.
So that's all that this contract is really establishing is the master service agreement and then allowing me to engage on an upgrade to our services.
We're adding another 5 years to an existing 15-year relationship.
15 plus, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Thank you. It looks like we have one motion item tomorrow. You're the lucky one, huh?
Yes, thank you. We have one motion item tomorrow. This is a contract with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. We workshopped this a couple weeks ago at a December work session. This is for a program development contract with the state for a program called School to Work. So this is sort of a get to know the program, see if it's something we want to fully engage in. Here, we anticipate down the road, the state will reach back out for a service contract. That would be the pass-through portion to providers if we have developed the program here locally. As a reminder, it was the state started reaching out about this program due to some legislation that passed that kind of directs the state to get this School to Work available in various communities across the state. So happy to answer further questions.
So we currently have an organization called LifeWorks that operates a business to employ developmentally disabled adults as part of a transition or work to school to work transition, I think, young adults. Is this a program that will add to that funding stream, or is this a totally new
You're talking about
training program?
Farm Dog
Yeah.
Bakery?
Right.
Yeah, so they do help train some adults, and even they partner with the STEPS program, which is actually right next door. They're right next door to each other. So this particular School to Work program could potentially partner with Farm Dog Bakery to enhance the training opportunities. That could be a potential location, for example, that some training occurs for this particular program.
I don't know if I can express adequately the question I have. I actually have 2 questions, but I'll forget the second one as I talk about the first. That's why I took a note. If we look at organizations like, I'll use national defense as an example. We have an Air Force, in an army, because there's quite a difference between flying a plane and driving a tank. And that impacts everything. There's the logistics, the strategies, the tactics, everything. And as we take a look at other programs, I've seen there's a tendency to start out with a concept and then dividing it and dividing it. And with each division, you incur its own overhead, its own administrative stuff and so forth. It's difficult for me to understand totally how this, all of a sudden, what we used to do for years and years and years is now divided out into 20 and 21-year-old. And that just seems bizarre to me. And so maybe tomorrow you can help explain to the public what the rationale is behind it, the impetus, what special problems is this partitioning solve? Part of my concern is that we'll always find, and we try and codify all kinds of special cases, and we end up ignoring the overall purpose of the program, which in this case is to help people. Only 20 and 21-year-old, you see what I mean?
Sure.
It's kind of bizarre to me.
Yeah, along those same lines, this has been on my mind all weekend, because I'm trying to figure out what we're solving. Do we have, I mean, we've been working these the STEP and different programs for people for a long time. So do we have a list of people that have come in and wanted something, but we haven't been able to provide? I'm not sure anybody's been turned away. And so I get real nervous when I'm already going to start a new state program, and I'm going, I almost would prefer, if we see the need, if we have people come and we can't help, we figure out how to make that work with something we already have than starting a whole new thing. Yeah.
So keep in mind that developmentally disabled youngsters by state law are allowed public education until they turn 21. And so we're not talking about kids who finished school at all by any means, stretch of the imagination. So these 20 and 21-year-olds or 20-year-olds are going to school, but then they're facing this end of that experience. And I'm only guessing this is an attempt to try to make sure that gap is taken care of.
Right.
How many are sitting in that
Yeah,
gap if we
that's a
if
good.
we have one? Have we
Well,
heard from
Because
people that say, well, I'm trying to help it, I got nothing that will help me anymore? I don't know that we have those calls.
And
What-
how about the 18-year-old or the 19-year-old?
Yeah. So some of the programs that we currently have, the steps, and yes, I know they do serve a portion of students in a similar way. I know that they're able to serve students who are more able to function independently. This particular program would broaden that to create that opportunity for those students who aren't able to function as independently, who may need supports to do the same types of things due to their disability. So that's one of the differences with this program, is that it could serve the student regardless of what their level of support is. We know that in looking at some of the data for the transition age students, that there's a really small percent that are engaged in adult employment program when they transition out of high school. And so part of what this is trying to address is those students that aren't engaged in employment on their way out of high school for whatever reason, whether they just didn't choose to engage or they had higher support needs and weren't a fit for the programs that we do have. And this contract too this is the program development contract. So this is to really look at a deeper dive into what we have, how it would work together, what gaps are there, and to see if it would be a good fit for us locally. And then down the road, we anticipate that direct service contract that we can consider to actually do the program. So
You don't think we can make that assessment ourselves? I really struggle with starting a new program, especially from the state, because once you open those doors, they never close and they just grow and grow and grow. So it worries me. I want these
Mhm.
kids to have opportunities if they want opportunities, but I don't know anybody that we're turning away. I don't know that we can't fix locally if there is, a lot of that support is really on the employer, right? I mean, they have to be able to accept, hey, we'll do this and we'll allow the support that we need.
That's what our adult employment, our regular adult employment services help cover, is that cost for that support. So the employer might provide some level of support, but there's a staff that provides more direct job coaching on site while the individual is working if needed, so that they can keep their job for their employment.
So who would be the local expert that could maybe share with us if there is a need? I mean, or is this just something that comes through the magic of their formulas? We're entitled to this program, so they're going to create a program to spend the money? Or have they identified, how do we, like Rick is asking, how do we
Let's-
know there's really a gap?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of twofold. There was legislation that passed that directed the state DVR office to create this program and to make sure that this program is available statewide. So there is that directive. We also, in looking at some of the transition data for just Cowlitz County, see that there are students not engaged in adult employment. And again, we can't really see why they're not engaged, but what we know is there's typically 10 to 15 transition age students that leave high school each year. And we've seen, just 2 or 3 of them maybe engaged in employment services after high school. Again, I think this is a way to try to fill a gap of the programs we do have are able to serve students that have lower level of supports or are able to function more independently and don't necessarily, they can't serve students who have a higher level of support need. So those students aren't able to have that same opportunity to engage in employment as they're transitioning out from high school. But we could invite in, if the board wants to learn more about this, we could see if one of the transition programs, would like to come in and share information, maybe from the STEPS program or something like that.
Because it could be a personal choice that they don't work anymore, or
It could be, yeah.
it could be a personal
Mhm.
choice. And if we know the number that's graduating and we know the number that continues on to work, then we should be able to contact the 12 that don't and why are we not doing this anymore? And if it's personal, I just, for me to buy in another government program, I really got to know that there's a need there. And I'm struggling with that. I'll be honest with you. I'm struggling with that.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate this opportunity to have more of this discussion, because we could certainly hold off and invite others in to share some more information who do some of this work now. As I mentioned, the STEPS program, and they can share some more information if the board's interested in hearing that.
Yeah, I'd prefer to get deeper into it. I'm just, what I'd really prefer is what we already do is how do we just tweak that to cover these kids without all of a sudden the state sending us more program mandates and
Yeah.
nonsense.
Yeah, the program development side is kind of one piece, but the service side, I mean, we have our state contract for our adult employment. So the next step with this for the direct service contract is that same service support, but for students who are under 21, that 19-20. Our adult employment program can only start after they're 21 or after they graduate high school. So there's that piece, but we can certainly we can kind of pause and get some more information.
Yeah, I agree with the chairman. There's always difficulty. We suffered greatly over the past several years with the experts on COVID and experts on education haven't helped us out at all. So I think we need to be a little more self-reliant. I get no comfort out of making a decision and then saying, well, I was misled by the expert. It's still incumbent upon us to understand what the expert is saying and see if it really holds true. One of the difficulties I've had is many of the experts we have get paid by the system for which we are questioning. And there's an evident conflict of interest. It may not be immediately traceable into dollars, but it may be traceable into the eyeglasses you wear. I could give some examples, but I'll pass. However, I did have two comments or questions, remember, and I got the first one out. The other one is more for the board, and I'm struggling a little bit with the purpose of this meeting. And don't misunderstand me. I think this meeting is working out quite nicely and is quite useful. But I don't want to, part of why we're doing it in the public is so that the public can see and understand the discussions. If we're going to go Tuesday now, let's say we had discussed this and it all worked out that we were all gung-ho for everything. We'd come in on Tuesday in the morning, get the meeting going, and we say, how do you vote on one? Check, check, check. Oh, okay, all done. And that would not satisfy, I think, our need to be transparent about how things were done. So I'd like a comment on.
Yeah. Well, I think I hear what you're saying. We need to maintain openness and not just rubber stamp stuff. And I try real hard to do that. These are difficult ones here because you get beat up. Well, the commissioners don't want to help these people, and that's totally not the case. What I want to do is make sure that we're doing it in the right way, and if there's a need, and that it can be supported. Now, if tomorrow we get a ton of people in here that tell me stories of my kid couldn't do anything more after this, then I'm open enough to try and look at how we provide that opportunity. I don't think the opportunity always needs to come from the state. I think, but I really try hard not to close my mind on this stuff.
So, yeah, so that for me, that's not the question. For me is tomorrow when we present something that we discussed here, I wouldn't want the staff just not to repeat. You know, with this discussion, we've highlighted areas of information or concern. I would want them to be comfortably presented again on Tuesday. And in this case, this is excellent because it might save you some effort depending on how you wish to approach. So overall, it'll save us a lot of time in the public view while using up a little more of our time here. But these are good discussions that really need to take place.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think it actually is beneficial to the departments because they're hearing what maybe concerns I have. Now, Gina, she's probably going to go back and she'll come back with some things to address what she's heard today.
Yeah.
We're not under a deadline particularly to get this passed.
No,
I mean, I see it's supposedly started last summer.
well, they keep resending it with updated dates, but no, if we want to, like I said, if we want to hold off and get some more information, happy to do that.
And I think just echoing the comment, it's not what Olympia is telling us we need. What are the local folks that evidence on, where the gap is that this is trying to fit?
Sure, sure.
I still think it's great for discussion tomorrow because I'd really like to hear if there's public comment and
Okay.
what anybody
Okay.
has to say.
So we'll plan to keep it on, and what may end up happening, it may end up getting tabled, is what I'm hearing, maybe. Okay.
Possible.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're down to, are we down to? Human, do I have, let me ask real quick, because I know we have some public in here. Any public comment before we head into human resources and stuff where we have executive session? Okay, Jessica?
Good morning, Commissioners. Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have a few requests to fill this morning. The first item comes from Facilities. They're requesting to fill a project coordinator position with a employee retiring. So
This is Don's replacement.
you have any questions or concerns?
Just replacing, I'm good.
I don't think
Is
we
this
need to
going to be,
do maintenance, do we?
No.
is this one of those situations
I'm hearing about a lot of potholes right now.
is this a situation where it'll be filled by somebody within the department, so we'll be coming back for a new hire, or is it?
For that.
Yeah, I think it goes out to union advertisement first. If there's no candidates, then it gets released to the public. So there might be some interest there.
So if we can request domino effect for this one, then it potentially could get filled by another staff member.
But you're not requesting more funds to expand staff, just to replace existing staff.
Correct.
And probably at cost savings because a senior employee is left, so replace them with somebody a little bit lower on the salary scale.
Correct.
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Next item I have comes from Noxious Weeds. They're requesting to fill one of their field inspectors. The employee resigned and her last day will be this month. So this is a full-time inspector position.
Jennifer, haven't seen you in a while.
Good morning, Jennifer Mendoza, Noxious Weeds. We're
You have how many inspectors full-time?
we are staffed for 2 inspectors full-time,
Okay.
and one of those positions has just become vacant.
It's a replacement, I'm good.
Everything's working out in the budget, right?
Yes,
And you aren't exhausting all the weeds, so you still have stuff to do?
there's plenty of weeds to find.
Okay. Just had to be sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then next request comes from the Health Department. They have 2 vacancies. The first vacancy is their environmental health lead. The employee put in his notice. He is moving up to Thurston County for a job. And then the second one is an environmental health specialist. And she is going to Wahkiakum.
So you've lost your environmental health manager
Correct.
and then these 2 other positions out of that.
That's correct. Our environmental health manager, as you may recall, took a position with Thurston County, and
Yeah.
one of our
Here
lead
goes. That's why
positions
somebody else is.
took a
going first.
position with Thurston County
Okay.
as well. So we're having some turnover.
Are we not keeping adequate problems here? They have to go to Thurston to find them?
So we have 2 going up to Thurston.
Correct.
Oh.
Yes.
One to
And one
Wahkiakum.
to Wahkiakum. Yeah. Yes.
So it's actually 3 people?
Well, we
Right.
have the 1 vacancy. Season's been gone for a
Right.
while, all right? And 2 more.
And one's going west and one's going north?
One's going, yeah, Thurston and Wahkiakum.
So she recruited him? Or is it him?
Right, Jesse Smith, you may know Jesse.
Yeah. Oh, darn.
Yeah, he's been with the county for 19 years, so it's quite a good loss there. I mean, they both are, but yeah.
My only question to you is do you feel like you want your manager decision made and then have some input in these two positions before or?
That would be ideal. We are looking at applications for the manager position. We hope to have maybe interviews soon for that. So that would be ideal. And we could certainly do that. We could open them up and then try to move forward kind of with the manager and then help to fill the others.
So with these two vacancies, the approval pile is getting deeper. Because you can't get to them yet. You have so many requests and so many employees, and you have fewer employees, you're not going to get to the requests quite as quickly, right?
It's primarily, these positions primarily do the restaurant, food safety type work. So restaurant inspections, temporary permits, those types of things. So we are definitely looking at workload and what that looks like for the next few months as we work through this.
Wow.
Mhm.
And so timing wise, it's best to get started gathering the applications to fill the vacancies. If you hire a manager, most likely they'll have the final say on the selection.
Yeah, it would be great if we could hire the manager position and they can help finish that process. If we have applications, they can help with the reviewing and hiring and interviewing and that type of thing.
Yeah.
A quick question, who's going to do the hiring of the manager? That would be you and whom?
Carol and I, we might involve some other members of our leadership.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm good with it.
So
And-
Jessica, do you do exit interviews then to find out if there are other reasons than just more money?
Yeah, I believe Casey has exit interviews scheduled with both of the individuals.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Yeah, and just along those lines, sort of, Jessica, I'll always continue to emphasize as much due diligence as possible for the senior level spots.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last request I have comes from risk management. Kathy was unable to attend this morning, but the risk manager has put in his resignation, so we're requesting to fill his position.
We saw that coming.
Yeah.
We can't say yes fast enough.
Yes, yeah, I'd like to get that posted, and it's definitely a tough position to fill, so we'd like to get that posted as soon as possible.
Yeah, that one's a needed position for sure, even with it. All that stuff.
Agreed.
Right.
Those are my only requests to fill this morning. The only other item I have is an executive session under collective bargaining.
Is that why the clerk of the county is here?
It is.
Thank you.
Collective bargaining. And your favorite question, how long?
I'm gonna say 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay, we can adjourn to executive session for collective bargaining. Back from executive session, no decisions were made. Any miscellaneous? I sat in on the finance committee meeting the other day and I might just, it was a year ago, we went with that group GPA. And over the period of time, they set some goals for what they wanted to do and one of the goals, and I'll just kind of tell you where we are. The goal for keeping liquid was like 35% liquid and 65 other. At the end of December of this year, we were at 32% and other. So they've almost worked and got that one taken care of. We like it.
What's the definition of liquid?
They have access to it right away. It's held in,
Right, that one is clear. What's the other one?
The other
it
one-
must be tiered.
the other one will put it in treasuries, agencies, corporates or munis. But the corporates and munis are pretty limited. Well, and we don't invest a ton in that.
So they're liquid right there also. I mean, any of those securities are negotiable on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, you can, yeah.
Okay, I think I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And they concentrate on 1 to 3 year issues. They want the duration right around the benchmark is 1.35, and I think they're real close to that. A little under that. I think they're right around close to a year. Book year yield at the end of for December 31st, 2023 on our whole portfolio was 5.1. Net of fees, it was 5.4. So that's pretty decent.
You mentioned that a while back. That was
Yeah.
our share, because we're
Yeah.
investing for all those other governments.
So I guess a nutshell on the report, what they had told us they were gonna do and the things we were striving to do, it looks like we're making, they've done what they've said.
In your experience, when I assume the credit union goes and does investments.
Yeah.
The risk computations are how do you minimize the risk while maximizing the return?
Well, we would put limits on some of the we buy some mortgage backs and stuff, but there was always limits on some of that stuff you could do. And everything we did was laddered. We used a 5-year ladder and it was all based on what we thought our liquidity needs were. So maturity dates would run through that. And but we would do some longer term stuff and some mortgage backs and some stuff, but it was very, very limited.
Would you buy, I'll use the word insurance, I'm not sure what the right word. Would you buy insurance on any of the longer term stuff?
I don't recall that we got too much into that.
Yeah. I don't think it's a easy problem at all.
Yeah. And then, of course, every year, then we had another firm look over what we were doing. We were big. I don't know if every institution is the way. We were very big on auditing and make sure we didn't get out of whack.
Yeah. 5% is, I think, pretty darn good.
I think we ought to be pretty happy with that. And
Yeah.
And I think our whole, Deborah and her crew, and of course, this organization seem to be working really well together. So.
That's good.
And we lumbered along for years otherwise.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I sit in that committee meeting and
Of course, when the interest rates were really low, it wasn't that big of a deal, but this is taking advantage of the market. Where we didn't before, we just.
I think the mechanism would be the same before. It just, before we were only in the most secure of secure. So.
It's whatever the state decided, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's kudos to our treasurer.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Any other miscellaneous? See none, we will adjourn. Thank you.